Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Kidney Conversations. I would like to hand over to Sanjay Mistry, who's going to be hosting today's event.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining the Kidney Conversations event that we have this afternoon. As many of you know, today is the first day of Diabetes Week, and we're going to be focusing on some of the research Kidney Research UK is funding to diagnose, prevent, and treat diabetic kidney disease. So it's wonderful to see such a range of supporters here today. Before I introduce myself, I just want to run through a few bits of housekeeping, just to let you know the event's going to be recorded and shared with supporters who wished to join but couldn't join today. So please do stay on mute, and if you're comfortable, please have your camera on so our speakers can see you if and when you ask a question. And to ask a question, please use the chat function in this chat, and we'll be asking as many of the questions as we can live. But if your question doesn't get answered, we'll do our best to get back to you and make sure it is after the event. And thank you to everyone also who's submitted a question in advance. So my name is Sanjay Mistry, as I said, and I'm 2 years post-transplant, a kidney and pancreas transplant that I had back in 2020. I was, just as a brief history, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at the age of 22, and it was managed mainly through diet, exercise, but the diabetes continued to develop, and by the age of 30 I was put onto insulin, both slow acting and fast acting, and then also I had complications in my eyes and developed diabetic retinopathy in my early 30s, and I had about 10 or 12 laser operations to remove egregious blood vessels popping up in my eyes, and I thought that was the worst of it. Never really thought about kidney disease being associated with diabetes. But in 2017, I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, originally at stage 3A, I think it was, but not a great stage. And really was told, you know, things will be monitored, carry on as you are, it's all fine, we just have to be careful and monitor. However, my kidney disease basically fell off a cliff very quickly, and by 2018 I was being fitted for peritoneal dialysis, and I started peritoneal dialysis in 2019. At the same time, being put on the transplant list for a kidney and pancreas transplant. So everything happened really quickly and all of a sudden, and progressed extremely rapidly. And I had my transplant on the 4th of July 2020, a really successful operation. Both my organs are working really, really well and have been since almost the minute they were connected up. I had a series of complications with other parts of my post-op recovery, which took a little time to get over, but I'm happy to say in a month's time, or less than a month's time, it'll be 2 years. So that's really good. That's really positive. And since I've had my transplant, I've done a lot more work with kidney research. So I did some fundraising earlier in the year where I ran 5 kilometers every day for the month of April, which really hurt my legs, and I raised £2,000 or £3,000 for the guys. And then I've been doing, and you'll hear from Patricia later, similar things to this, just talking about what I've gone through, my experiences, and helping others hear and ask questions and share some of my experience. So that's probably enough of me. I'm really excited that we're joined by Professor Richard Coward and Dr. Abigail Lay, who are both funded by Kidney Research UK and have projects focusing on diabetic kidney disease. Their research is incredibly important, as around 40% of people with diabetes could eventually develop diabetic kidney disease, and is now one of the leading causes of kidney failure in the UK. It's vital that we learn more so we can identify which people with diabetes are most at risk of kidney disease, this will mean we can work to prevent it and develop new drugs to treat it. Our researchers then will give you an overview of the research of their projects, and there'll be some time to ask some questions after they've presented. We'll also hear from Patricia, who will tell us about her personal experience of diabetes and kidney disease. So moving along, our first speaker today is Professor Richard Coward. Richard is a professor of renal medicine and a consultant paediatric nephrologist at Bristol Royal Hospital for Sick Children. Richard and his colleagues have received funding from Kidney Research UK for many years and has discovered pathways that are important for diabetic kidney disease that are being developed into potential new treatments for this condition. So I'm delighted to introduce Richard, and Richard, it's over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sanjay. And I thought that was a really very nice way you kind of summarised your own pathway, which puts everything into context. So my name's Richard. I'm a paediatric nephrologist. So I look after children with kidney disease. And thankfully, there aren't many children with diabetes who've got kidney disease. However, the numbers are increasing, which I think is very worrying. Sanjay, as you absolutely said, which was spot on, diabetic kidney disease is the leading cause of kidney failure in the world. Both here and in America. I think even more worrying, it's also the leading cause of kidney disease in underdeveloped countries where they haven't got access to transplantation and they haven't got access to dialysis. So for these patients, it really is a kind of a death sentence when they develop significant kidney disease. So I started getting into diabetic kidney disease by accident, which is often the way lots of us do in research. So my PhD was done at the turn of this century in 2000, and I was studying kidney cells in a dish. And I was looking at a very rare cause of kidney disease in children called congenital nephrotic syndrome. And totally by accident, I realised with the team in Bristol that kidney cells were very responsive to insulin. And as everybody knows, insulin's the major hormone that is responsible for diabetes. So either you don't make any insulin, so you're a type 1 diabetic, or Sanjay, as you said, you develop resistance to this hormone, so that's type 2 diabetes. And what we found was that a kidney cell called the podocyte, which is a cell in the filtering unit of the kidney, was very insulin responsive, and managed to prove that this was important both by looking at human cells in dishes, but also by looking at other models, including mice, whereby we could make just this one cell type insulin resistant and they developed diabetic kidney disease. And we've gone on to look at other organisms, including flies. And really interestingly, flies have got mini kidneys in them that are also very insulin sensitive. And obviously with flies, we can use those to screen lots of different drugs to try and work out new drugs. Kidney Research UK have been absolutely brilliant for my research because they've helped me develop a number of grants. They've also helped me develop some really brilliant people, and you're going to hear about one of them at the end. So Abby used to work with me, and I'm very gutted that I've lost her and she's gone to Manchester now, but hopefully I'll still work with her for years to come. And what you've been really good at doing is not just Abby, we've got Holly, we've had lots of students that have come to work with me for summer studentships who've all done brilliant work. And what I'm really proud of is lots of them are still into diabetic kidney disease. So the work we're doing at the moment is we're looking at these kidney cells and we're trying to work out how we can make them less insulin resistant by looking at new pathways that we can then go in and manipulate with drugs. And we've got a number of them that are looking really promising. We work together with industry and we've had a number of really good collaborations with Novo Nordisk and Takeda to develop the projects. And we also work very closely with people. So we, because of Kidney Research UK, have been asked to lead a big work strand in a big pan-European diabetic kidney consortium where we're looking at patients, looking at lots of different biomarkers to develop new treatments. And I hope that we will continue to make good progress because we really do need some new treatments. There are things that have come on board, and I suspect quite a lot of you have heard about, and you may well be on SGLT2 inhibitors, but I think there are many other medicines and ways that we can together combat diabetic kidney disease to make things much better. Yeah, I think that's really what we've done. I don't know whether there are any questions or any more specifics that would be helpful, Sanjay, that you'd like me to talk about.
Thanks, Richard. Flies. Now, who would have thought they had kidneys? That's just totally amazing. So, a couple of questions from me, and just to allow a couple of others to come in and ask some questions. How do you involve patients in your work?
So we ask patients about what things would make their lives better and whether they think doing fundamental science is helpful, and undoubtedly they say they do that. As we all know, and as everybody on the call knows, COVID-19 has been a real pain for everybody over the last couple of years. But just before we started that, we were developing a project where we were asking patients whether they would consider having a kidney biopsy at the beginning of their diabetes. And the reason for that is because work we've done and other work that's been done throughout Europe suggests that patients that develop diabetic kidney disease are much more likely to be insulin resistant. So their cells are less likely to respond to insulin, particularly in their kidneys. And we thought this might be a really good way of detecting whether patients would benefit from particular treatments. But obviously, I'm not having a kidney biopsy myself, so we had to ask the patients whether they thought this would be something that they would participate in. And I thought, as ever, they were absolutely phenomenal, because practically everybody we talked to said, yes, I would take a biopsy. And even more than that, it wasn't necessarily for their own benefit, it was for the benefit of patients to come afterwards. So we do, and I think also Kidney Research UK is really good at getting, as you and Patricia, patient involvement, and it really helps us think about what questions need answering and how we can do it, and also how we can involve patients in developing the ideas.
Okay, thank you very much. What would you say has been your most exciting finding in your time working in this field?
Right. So again, Abby will be able to tell you this, is when sometimes you do an experiment and you don't find what you're thinking about. So I told you about, I started off as a children's research looking at a very rare kidney disease. And then we were just doing an experiment. We had a hint and we thought, are these cells going to be insulin responsive? And it was a really simple experiment. We just put some insulin on these podocyte cells, and then we measured whether they took up glucose. And what we found was within 15 minutes, they took up about 3 times the amount of glucose, showing they were very insulin sensitive. So that one experiment, I think, has kind of basically led to the rest of my career. So when we found that out, that was, wow, this is really good. And actually, it's kind of led to 20 more years of work. So I think that one simple experiment.
Brilliant. Since the start of your career, what changes have you seen in the ways diabetic kidney research has been managed or is managed?
Well, so I think there have been quite a lot of really good advances. So I think the SGLT2 inhibitors have recently, and they were found really fortuitously. We never expected them to be really beneficial for diabetic kidney disease. They were thought to be really helpful for heart disease to begin with, but the really, really good trials work showed that they were beneficial for kidney disease. We still don't really understand how they work. So I think there's some interesting research to be done there at the cellular level. Work that we fed into, again, which I'm really proud of, was that a group in Sweden looked at a massive cohort of diabetic patients who developed kidney disease, and they substratified them at presentation. And as I said, they found the group that were much more likely to get kidney disease would have cellular insulin resistance. So that was why myself and Abby was on the grant as well. We were asked to lead a big work package of a European grant looking at diabetic kidney disease, particularly with a focus on cellular insulin resistance, to look for new biomarkers so that we could segregate patients, but also to think about new ways of treating patients.
Okay, that's really good. There's a question in the chat, and I think you might have to explain some of these acronyms for me. So the question is, the main aim to me is prevention or before treatment. Do you feel that CGM with training would make a difference? This person's type 1, and if it had been available 20 years ago, I don't think I would have needed a TX.
Okay.
Cool.
So I know that, so this is, I'm the same as you, Sanjay, trying to work out. TX is transplant for sure. The CGM, I don't know what the CGM is, and I should know. Oh, somebody's tapping away, so I think we'll find out. Is it continuous glucose monitoring? Constant glucose monitoring, yeah, continuous glucose monitoring. So, yeah, undoubtedly getting, which I think people with diabetes are much, do a really good job trying to keep your diabetic control as good as possible. I think will help undoubtedly. You're absolutely right with the kind of new monitoring systems for diabetes. That will be really helpful. Also, we're living in a world now. When I was at university, I didn't even have a computer, and let alone a mobile phone. But the way technology is advanced, both for research, for big data, we can look at thousands of variables at one time with computers is really helpful. I also think, and I think work is being done now to look at artificial pancreases, for instance, whereby you can use technology to measure your blood glucose and give insulin at the same time. So I think it makes complete sense, though. The better you can control your diabetes in a physiological manner, the better it will be for your kidneys, your heart, your eyes, your skin. I think that will be helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's true. So when I was diagnosed 20 years ago, yeah, I was only really told about diet and exercise, and should keep your sugars level, but was never really told about how it could be impact on you in years to come. And I think if I had, as one of our guys have said, that constant glucose monitoring would have helped me, completely. I know people that I work with that are fitted with the constant glucose monitoring, have it on their iPhone, can measure it, and it allows how much, it gives the right amount of insulin, and it works really well for them. Right. I think that's really going to be useful for lots of people in the future, especially for younger children, and people in their teens. I think that's really, really.
So just coming back to, obviously my normal job is I work in the hospital half the time with children and adolescents, and especially type 1 diabetes, but more type 2 diabetes are coming through, but type 1 diabetes, it's pretty stressful when you get diabetes. And also you've got to control your glucose, you've got to give your insulin, and you've also got to do all those normal things of going through adolescence and puberty. So there's a lot that goes on at that time, I think.
Yeah. Another question here. Who would have a kidney biopsy before diagnosis having kidney disease?
So I mean, again, what you could do is when you have diabetes to begin with, again, you probably know they measure your urine, they look and see whether you've got any protein in your urine quite often. So looking for albumin in your urine, because quite a lot of patients with diabetes who get kidney disease will leak a bit of albumin into their urine. You may also measure your creatinine in your blood, which often happens when you're a diabetic, which you may have done, once a year. And what we talked to the patients about was maybe if it's just slightly abnormal, maybe that's the time to come in and possibly do a kidney biopsy. You've got to balance it, because having a procedure, a kidney biopsy, does have risks, so there are balances. But perhaps by doing that and also using all this really, really good new technology, we can work out which group you're in and whether you would benefit more from type diabetic control, particular treatments and things like that. So absolutely, you've still got to work it out. And I wouldn't say everybody with diabetes should have a kidney biopsy, but it may be that there would be a fraction of the patients that we think have got a bit of kidney disease that may benefit more from it. And even, as I said, even they may not benefit from it. What I was really blown away from was that patients said, I would only want to see the results back. If it's going to help other people with diabetes, that would be good enough for me.
Okay. And another question from Ron: is there a case for screening for early kidney disease in at-risk babies or children?
Do you mean babies or children with diabetes, or children of people with diabetes?
I think you probably answered that both, but I think probably children and babies with diabetes, I would imagine. So
I think it's very, and again, it's very sensible to, if you've got a very strong history of diabetes, and very, very small percentage of people with diabetes can have genetic causes. They normally get them quite early. It's pretty rare, but there's, I think if you've got diabetes, absolutely, the children, all our children will get yearly urine, or they should get yearly urine tests to see whether they've got any albumin in their urine, and they should probably have a blood test relatively regularly as well. I'm talking like once a year if you've got diabetes. And again, then it's just really good understanding of the symptoms. Most people, when they develop diabetes, especially type 1 diabetes, they'll be weeing a lot to begin with. So they'll be very thirsty and they'll be weeing a lot. And again, most doctors and nurses and the team will know to look for diabetes, and that's really easy. That's dipping the urine for glucose.
Okay, great. What do you think is the biggest challenge to overcome when it comes to finding treatments for diabetic kidney disease?
So what do I think? So I think actually having I think that the human tissue early on would be very helpful to look at the kidney cells as they're developing diabetes. What we can do is we do mimic that with, as I said, with our flies and with our mice, we can look at it, but flies and mice are slightly different from humans. So that would be helpful. I think mostly we've also looked at the urine of patients from diabetes, and they're normally fantastic at getting involved in research. So, you know, and now allowing the researchers to have some of your urine, have some of your blood tests. Sometimes, you know, you probably have all been part of trials where they've said, would you mind if we looked at your genetics, for instance, to see whether they can find any risk factors? So yeah, I think having really good patient involvement is incredibly helpful. I also think that it's really brilliant the way that you support the country, charities, help the researchers do the research by supporting the groups and developing careers.
Brilliant. We're coming to almost time. Just one more final question for me is, in your years of working with patients, have you been inspired by any of them? And if so, in what way?
I think I've been inspired by all of them, to be honest. I mean, I'm very lucky that, like this morning, I did a clinic with lots of children, and you see the children, you see how they get on with what they do. And as well as that, I'm really impressed and proud of how involved you guys get on for helping other people. I think it's a massively good skill when you're dealing with diabetes and kidney disease and other complications, that you can still spend all this time to help other people. So I don't think there's any one particular person. I find all of them really inspirational, and that's why I like doing what I do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard. Thanks very much for your presentation, for answering those questions. If there are any other questions from anyone who's watching and listening, let us know, and we'll follow up post-event. So thanks again, Richard, for all of that. We'll move on to Patricia. So I'm delighted to introduce Patricia. Patricia suspected she was exhibiting signs of diabetes when she was around 13. But once diagnosed, Patricia managed her diabetes with insulin. But 15 years later, her health took a sudden turn for the worse. She didn't realise that she developed chronic kidney disease. And since she's had a successful transplant. So just want to introduce Patricia and say thank you for joining us, Patricia. You're on mute, Patricia. Can you, Patricia? There you go.
Me? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for inviting me to speak today. As I was just said, my name is Patricia, and slight discrepancy in that I didn't realize I was diabetic until when I was around just nearly 35 years old. What happened? I became pregnant. I went to the doctor. I said, "Doctor, I think I'm pregnant." Well, something was wrong. I went to the doctor that day, and he sent me to the hospital. Everything was confirmed. That was 28 years ago. Yeah, that's when I was diagnosed.
Okay, thank you. So got a few questions for you, Patricia, to help the audience understand, what you've been going through and some of your lived experience. So can you share how you were, diagnosed with diabetes? So you said you thought you were pregnant, you went to see the doctor, and then from there they discovered you were diabetic?
Yes. And on the same day, they put me on insulin, that same day.
Ah, okay. Now I understand. Sorry, we had some sound issues just before you were talking that, so I just wanted to clear that one up. And how did that make you feel? What was your kind of initial reactions, emotions? It was,
Actual shock for two things: shock that I was pregnant, and shock that I'm diabetic at the same time. And it was very difficult to deal with the two emotionally. And then I had to make that decision to deal with it physically as well. Yeah.
Okay. And so were you initially monitored quite a lot because you were pregnant as well? And it was all of a sudden, what was your care like with health professionals in that early stage?
Actually, it was exceptionally good. I was seen every Monday morning at the hospital for 9 months. I used to go in at 8 for a blood test, back at 10, and then a late one, 8 o'clock at night. And that happened every single month. Yes, it was a bit of a burden at the time, but they were able to monitor how much insulin I needed. They would ring the doctor. The doctor would ring me on Tuesday and say, yep, up your insulin or lower your insulin, whatever. I think it was great. I really do.
Brilliant. And that's really, really good to know, because we're just in the previous section, we're talking to Richard, and one of the comments was around continuous glucose monitoring, which obviously wasn't available back then. So, you having weekly blood tests and stuff to help you, get the right amounts of insulin on a weekly basis or a daily basis was I suppose, was that time equivalent of continuous glucose monitoring as it was back then. So just wanted people to kind of understand how the difference, 30 odd years ago, had in monitoring in your glucose. Did you know diabetes was a risk factor for kidney disease? And when did you start noticing problems with your kidneys?
To be honest, I didn't know that it would affect my kidneys at all. I wasn't told. And for around 4 or 5 years, I had, I would call it violent vomiting episodes. I was just in and out of hospital nearly every other week. And this really affected me. I didn't know what was wrong. And then the hospital decided that it was my gallbladder. So I had that removed. And then when that was removed, the vomiting increased. So it couldn't have been the actual gallbladder. So I kept going from hospital to hospital. And in my local area at the time, I had 2 hospitals. And in one hospital, a doctor came in and he said, Patricia, go to hospital A, come out of hospital B, because in hospital A, the doctors are brighter. And that's exactly what I did. I went to hospital A, and that's where they sent me to my GP. My GP sent me to the hospital for tests. However, whilst I was doing the test, it was the person carrying out the test who looked at me and said, how do you feel knowing that you've got kidney disease? Up to that point, I didn't know. I don't know how I drove home, but I did get home, eventually. I was just devastated, and I thought it could have been handled better.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll mirror that. So I was never really aware of the risk of kidney disease when I was diagnosed with diabetes 20 years ago. And so when I went to the doctor because I had swelling in my ankles. You know, I was at my sister-in-law's wedding and I couldn't get my trousers on. It was that kind of bad. Then I went to the doctor and they did the tests, and yeah, exactly the same as you. Oh, by the way, you've got to keep. We think there's an issue with your kidneys. We'll repeat the tests. So, yeah, I'll mirror your comments. I believe you're on dialysis. What kind of impact did that have on you and your family?
Well, I'm on dialysis now because actually my transplanted kidney failed after 8 years. So I'm back on PD now. But what do you want to know, how the whole thing affects my family, or what do you want to know specifically?
I suppose, you know, I was on PD dialysis before I had my transplant. So from my experience, I know I've got a young family. I had to continue to work. So there were impacts on my life and my family and the way that we changed our lifestyle and the way we were. And I'm just wondering, you know, what the impacts were for you and your family on living with dialysis.
I was on PD before my transplant, and of course I was working then, and it really impacted on the family, going to work, getting up on time, feeling exhausted. So I actually gave up work. That was 10 years ago. Now I'm back on PD because I'm retired. It's slightly different. However, the problem I have now is that because I'm not as able-bodied as I used to be, I do have technical support who come in every day and set up my machine, etc. That's where it impacts on my family, because sometimes I don't know when they're coming. Or like last week, I went 2 consecutive nights without dialysis because no one knew that they weren't sending anyone. So those are the type of problems I'm having to rush locally to the dialysis unit to pick up fluids. That's how it's affected. It's a different type of impact. Yeah.
Yeah. No, completely. I mirror some of your things around PD. So I used to have to go to bed about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the evening, so we could do my 8-hour cycle.
Yes.
So I could go to sleep. Young children, so my wife had to, you know, look after the kids if they got up in the night, but had to make sure I was finished for 5:30, 6 in the morning, so I could get ready and go to work. And we did that for 18 months. So it had you know, for me, it had a huge impact on our family.
Yes.
And it sounds like exactly the same for you, and you're experiencing that. Now, I'm sorry to hear that your transplant's now failed and you're back on dialysis. But how did when you did have the transplant, how did life change once your kidney transplant was there and you're back active again and leading what some might determine a more normal life?
Oh my goodness, it changed dramatically for the better. Didn't have to do the 8 hours or 9 hours it is now, Sanjay. Also, I didn't have to plan to travel. I could just get up and go. I actually went on a cruise with my machine for 14 nights, and that worked well, but it took 6 months of planning for me to be able to do that. Also, I just felt better. I felt normal, and you could see it in my face. You could just hear it in my voice. Yes, my family were very, very pleased and happy for me, and we were able to bond a bit better, because after spending 8 hours every night in my bedroom with my door closed, locking them out, they were able now to barge in my room to see what I was doing. So yes, there you go.
No, that's brilliant. And it's good to hear you had a holiday. We managed to have one. And again, it took a number of months to organise. Went to Portugal, so I took my machine in a suitcase, and then had all my liquid dropped off at the villa where we were staying. So, yeah, completely echo that. You're really active in sharing your journey and helping others. So, what are the key things with that people with diabetes should look out for, and you know, make sure they look after their kidneys?
I think as a diabetic, we need to look out for signs in our bodies, know your body and listen to what your body is saying to you. For example, if you're having problems with your eyes, go and get them checked. If you're having the swelling like you had in your ankles, go and get it checked, either by the GP or your diabetes team. Also, what I would say is sometimes you have to convince your GP or your diabetes team. You will tell them one thing and they try to tell it's in your mind. I mean, I got told that so many times, to the point that I should just sit there at times and keep quiet, or I would make a decision that I'm going to argue. So you have to be kind of strong and decide, do I keep quiet today or do I argue tomorrow? Because it's your life. Yeah. And if you tell me you're having problems with your eyes, don't let them tell you you're tired and you just need to change your glasses. Things like that. Okay.
Brilliant. No, that's really good to know, and that echoes some of the stuff that I've been doing as well. So, yeah, convincing your GP, and I don't know if you had the same, but once my health professionals thought I was established with my type 2 diabetes and I could look after it and managing it, the support that I got dwindled slightly. So there was less of a support. So I'd have checkups much more infrequently, and they wouldn't necessarily check in or check that, they just they just checked in every now and then to say, was I handling my glucose levels? It's been 6 months, maybe we should do a blood test. And that was kind of it. So the support I had from health professionals at the beginning was brilliant, and then since I've had chronic kidney disease, when I had it, was amazing. It was that middle period when, as you say, you look at some of those symptoms, so your eyes, your legs, and you're not sure what to do, and you go and have a word with your GP, and some will believe you, some won't. They'll say you got tired eyes, or let's have a look. Yeah. But you're right, perseverance I think is a really good trait to have, and you should be wanting to make sure that it's just be persistent. There's a question here in the chat, Patricia. I hope you don't mind me. Liz is asking if you'd be willing to share whether your kidney donor was a live donor or a deceased donor.
A deceased donor.
And was it just a kidney transplant you had, or did you have a kidney and pancreas like myself?
Just a kidney.
Just a kidney. Okay, great. And then finally, just want to ask you, what changes do you want to see in the future as a result of diabetic kidney research from the likes of like Richard and Abigail, who we'll hear from in just a moment?
Well, early intervention, more education, because people like myself, and I mean like from my community group, are not very aware of certain things, i.e. diet, etc. So more education, early intervention, and not just to be told, like how I was told while I was getting a scan, that you have kidney disease, because I could have died that day with shock. So prevent shock, and just be open with us and allow us to have a dialogue with you. And that's what I would say.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Patricia, for taking time and sharing your thoughts and your story with us. It's been really fascinating for me personally, because it echoes much of what's happened to me over the last 20 years. So it's really good to hear that, I'm not on my own and it's not just happened to me. There are lots of other people out there and your experience is similar to mine. So really, thank you very much for sharing those words. So thank you, Patricia.
You're welcome.
Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Abigail Lay. Recent studies have shown that changes in gut bacteria are linked to the development of diabetic kidney disease. So Kidney Research UK has recently awarded a grant to study whether and how changes in gut bacteria are causing diabetic kidney disease, or whether this is purely a marker of disease. So Dr. Abigail from the University of Manchester is working alongside Dr. Caitlin Wade at the University of Bristol, and they're hoping their research will highlight if and how gut bacteria can be either measured or modified for the diagnosis, prevention and treatment of diabetic kidney disease. So over to you, Abby?
Thanks. I'm going to try and be able to change the slides, but I can't see the take control of the slides button anymore. So let's see how this goes. Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. I'm a laboratory scientist, not a clinician. As Richard said, I did my PhD with him in Bristol, looking at how insulin can affect cells of the kidney. So that got me into research into diabetic kidney disease. I've now moved to the University of Manchester to learn some more research skills and work with some more people. And one of the projects that we're really excited about starting is with one of the collaborators from Bristol, and that's looking at the gut microbiome in diabetic kidney disease. So we want to understand whether we could use this as a biomarker of disease, or whether it could be modified to help prevent the development of or the progression of diabetic kidney disease. So this is a project that we're hoping to recruit a PhD student on in the next couple of months. So what is the gut microbiome and why is it important? So we have a nice picture here. I hope you can all see it, and my slide has changed of the microbiome. I quite liked this cartoon, although obviously they don't go around wearing party hats or have eyes. But it's a collection of microorganisms that live in your gut. You've probably heard about the gut microbiome, mostly through adverts for probiotics and things and supplements such as Yakult. And the aim of such supplements is to promote good bacteria in your gut. And predominantly in things like Yakult, you see this type of bacteria here. So this is a picture of that particular type of bacteria under a microscope, and this is a Petri dish, so showing some of these bacteria grown in the lab. And really, this bacteria is supposed to be anti-inflammatory, although what's quite clear is that there isn't very much research into the gut bacteria and how it can actually influence your health. A lot of research that is being done, and something that when I was looking up Yakult on their website, is this gut-brain axis. Oh, I think there's a comment saying you can't see the slide. Can you see the gut? Yeah, okay, good. We're seeing nods. Yeah, is this gut-brain axis, and this is something that Yakult are investing money into looking at the moment. Is how, for example, the bacteria could release factors into the system which could influence your memory, your concentration, your mood or emotion. And this is something that they launched in 2021. We know things like diabetes can affect your gut bacteria, but we don't know very much at all about the gut-kidney axis. So the same kind of concept applies as the gut-brain axis. Your bacteria can release factors, they can be anti-inflammatory. So in that way, they could potentially influence kidney function. As I said, we don't really know very much about how gut bacteria could influence the kidney. So this is exactly what we want to address in this PhD project, to see how the gut microbiome might change in diabetic kidney disease. Could we use changes in the gut microbiome and these types of bacteria that are present in people to identify individuals who are at risk of developing kidney disease, for example, for early intervention, use as a biomarker. And potentially, if we find that changes in the gut bacteria are potentially causing some kidney damage, either through changing your immune system or releasing some other factors, could we then modify or target your gut bacteria, for example, with probiotics, to use in the treatment or prevention of diabetic kidney disease? So this is a picture of myself and Caitlin, who unfortunately isn't here today, but we've developed this project using both of our skill sets, using large human population studies, which is really Caitlin's arena, and my expertise of studying kidney cells in the laboratory. So we're hoping through this funding from Kidney Research UK to use human genetics or genetic information from large population studies that have already been performed, and also genetic information from our gut bacteria as well, and a technique called Mendelian randomization, which is something that Caitlin has a lot of experience in. So this will hopefully allow us to find species of bacteria which could be linked to diabetic kidney disease in human populations, and then study those in the lab in cells in a dish. So either the types of bacteria or certain chemicals secreted by the bacteria and how they influence kidney cell function. So to really test the effects of these altered gut bacteria on the function of kidney cells. So that's an overview of some of our recent and we think very exciting work, which will be funded by Kidney Research UK. We would love your thoughts and feedback. As we've already talked about, having input and thoughts from people who this research is most important, yourself as patients, is really valuable. So that's something that we'd be really happy to discuss. Thanks.
Thanks, Abby. That was really good and really interesting. So I've not heard of gut microbiomes with kidney disease. You hear about it in products like Yakult and how things in there. There's mouth microbiomes, which they're trying to do for different toothpastes, which I think Unilever make, and there's that. So, but I hadn't heard them for the kidney research. So that's really fascinating. So I found that was really useful. So I've got a few questions, and I'll start with a couple, and then hopefully, if there are a few other questions in the chat, I'll give you a few of those. So if the gut microbiome has a role in causing diabetic kidney disease, what could be done to modifying it?
So yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to find out in this research. If there is a causal role, if there are some changes in your gut bacteria which are causing kidney disease, those gut bacteria could then be modified either by introducing probiotic or prebiotic supplements, through certain dietary changes, and through things like exercise as well. So it's something that could be easily implemented if we found that certain gut bacteria were having a detrimental or a positive effect on kidney health. Yeah, but equally, I think the importance of this research is that even if we don't find a link that the bacteria are playing a direct causal role in the disease, there's still the opportunity for the gut bacteria in patients with diabetes or diabetic kidney disease to be used as a marker. So we've already found in some of our work that there are changes in the gut bacteria in individuals with kidney disease or not. So there's the opportunity that we could use those to identify patients at risk. For example, if you've got this particular strain of bacteria, that suggests you're more at risk of developing disease. So it could be implemented in that way as well.
Okay, brilliant. If the changes in gut bacteria turn out to be a marker of diabetic kidney disease, how could this information be used to predict those at risk of developing diabetic kidney disease?
Yeah. So as we just said, it's not just all about the direct cause of these changes in bacteria, but we could easily so even before kidney disease is developed, if we find profiles of bacteria in individuals with kidney disease, we could then screen people with diabetes for types of bacteria that are predictive of developing kidney disease. So it could be used as a screening tool to hopefully identify people at risk. So we can do things like take fecal samples. I know that's not the most glamorous. You probably do it in a urine sample as well. You can get fecal samples and look in those samples to see what types of bacteria are present.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got one question here from Maria. What are the bad bacteria found in the gut related to diabetes so far?
So I don't feel like that's something I can comment on confidently so far, because as I said, we've only just started this project and a lot of work needs to be done. But the work we have done has suggested not just in diabetes, but in kidney disease related to diabetes, there are certain species which are more likely to be present in those individuals. So yeah, I can't pin it down to certain types of bacteria just yet, but hopefully by the end of the next couple of years, we'll be able to tell you the answer to that question.
Brilliant, thank you. The final question for me, can you tell us a bit about how important Kidney Research UK has been to funding some of the stuff in your career?
Yeah. So I'm still an early career researcher, but Kidney Research UK funded my PhD with Richard. So I think had it not been for Kidney Research UK, I wouldn't have necessarily got into kidney research or diabetic kidney research. They then subsequently funded a project where we looked at the role of a molecule called neuropeptide Y in the kidney. So again, that allowed me to stay in kidney research. So I think, had it not been for the funding from Kidney Research UK, I could have been taking a different research path.
Okay, brilliant. There's another question in the chat here from Ron, asking, presumably these gut bacteria also have beneficial functions. So what are the implications if these bacteria are destroyed to combat kidney disease?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you will know from all the Yakult adverts and other adverts for probiotics, you're going to have some good bacteria and some bad bacteria. So there is a lot of research in the kind of microbiome field about how you can push the good bacteria to thrive while targeting the bad bacteria. So that's again something that we'll hopefully be able to identify in our research. So not only identifying the bad bacteria which are causing kidney disease, but also if some bacteria seem to be beneficial for kidney disease for whatever reason. For example, having their anti-inflammatory properties.
Brilliant, thank you. We're getting close to time, so I want to make sure we can finish by 5 o'clock. So I think there's one final question, and then I'm going to wrap up. So from Anne saying, does ambient glucose have an effect on the microbiome?
Yeah, absolutely. So every type of thing in your body, so glucose will have a huge impact on the types of bacteria that are growing in your gut, and that could be one of the things that's kind of driving these changes in your gut bacteria. Could just be the level of glucose in the body. Could make certain types of bacteria who really thrive in that high glucose environment to take over.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Abby. That was really fascinating. Like I say, I'd not really thought about the correlation between gut bacteria and diabetic kidney disease ever before. So I look forward to kind of finding out more about the study in a couple of years, hopefully, once you've got some results.
Yeah.
If there are any other questions for everyone else that's on the call, please send them through and we can follow up. I'm sure we're more than happy to do that. So we're at the end of today's event. I just want to say, on behalf of everyone here, really want to thank Professor Richard Coward, Dr. Abigail Lay, for all their work that they're doing and presenting here to us and answering all our questions. It's been really fascinating, guys, and really helpful, so thank you very much. And also a huge thank you to Patricia for sharing her personal story with us and helping other kidney patients. it was great to speak to someone who'd had a similar journey to me. Obviously, I didn't go to the doctors thinking I was pregnant, but the same thing. But and just personally, thank you for everyone at Kidney Research for asking me to host. I've really enjoyed it. It's been really fascinating and an absolute pleasure hosting this event. And we hope to see you at a future event soon. So thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today.